So, finding beauty in humanity, learning to see God in all people. That's our topic for tonight. I think when we look at Genesis, we see this wonderful quote from Genesis 1:27. God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And we have this image from the Sistine Chapel that Michelangelo painted, and it's from the creation. It's God creating Adam and reaching out and touching him. But it's this whole idea of, I think we can find God like in a sunset or in a storm. Some of us talked about those kinds of things. I think it was Dalton last week said that he likes, to watch a thunderstorm, and it reminds him of God's awesomeness when he sees the lightning and stuff like that. But God creates human beings in his image. And so as much as nature might speak to us of God and reveal something to us about God, human beings as part of God's creation reveal even more of the image of God. Yeah. So we have this quote here from the Catechism. Can I get somebody to read it?
I can read it.
Okay, thank you.
The vocation of humanity is to show forth the image of God and to be transformed into the image of the Father's only Son. This vocation takes a personal form, since each of us is called to enter into the divine beatitude.
So looking at this quote, I think there's a couple of things that I want to point out. One, it's a vocation. As a human being, we have a vocation to show forth the image of God. It's our call. And part of that is being transformed into the image of Jesus, right? So we have this caterpillar and butterfly. I don't know that caterpillar becomes that butterfly, but the imagery is there in the sense of we know that caterpillars go through a beautiful transformation process. And I think in our own lives, we can be aware too of how, as we encounter God, as we get to know God, as we grow in relationship with him, we change and we become more of who God created us to be. We show forth more of the image of God. And I think the second part where it says the vocation takes a personal form, that idea of personal is also important because each one of us is called to show God in a different way. I can't show the image of God that Leanne was created to show forth, or that Father Brian was created to show forth. And the way that I show God to other people and image God to other people is going to look different based on the gifts and talents that God has given me. And that's the same for each of us. But I think the important thing we want to be aware of is that each human person is an icon of God and a unique, unrepeatable creation. And that means that each person has a dignity and is a gift to us and to our world. So we have this quote from St. John Paul II. Every person in some way is a gift for us, and we can say of each, God has given you to me. This awareness becomes a source of enrichment for each of us. We would be in grave danger were we to be unable to recognize the richness in each human person. So this idea of God has given you to me, I think that's important. Over on the side here, there's a picture of some of my nieces and nephews. That's about half of them, I think. But anyway, it's easy to see God in my family. When I go home to visit, I enjoy being with them, and I see, especially in children, I think it's very often easy to see their innocence and their wonder. but my parents and my brothers and sisters also are like gifts to me. And I think all of us have experienced that our family in many ways is a gift to us. And sometimes they might drive us a little bit crazy, but for the most part, we see the gift in them. And I think the same thing is true like for me, for my sisters in community that I live with, or that are part of the province that I live in, or my coworkers, or the students that I get to spend time with on a regular basis. It's easy to see God in each of these people, and to recognize the gifts of students who sing well, and students who play soccer and share that gift with other people, and students who have an artistic talent, and just the different ways that the different gifts that the people that we work with have. So it can be very easy, the people that are close to us, to recognize the gift that they are for us. But as I was thinking about this presentation, I was also thinking about that idea of each person is a gift from God. And so that means that the random person I encounter when I go to the grocery store is in some way a gift to me. Or the person who cuts me off on the highway might be a gift to me, although that is sometimes more difficult to see, right? Or the homeless person who's asking for something on the side of the road when I'm driving to work. Each of those people is also a gift from God. And I think it's sometimes easier to overlook that, at least for me, to not recognize that, because they're not people that I see regularly. But I think what we want to develop is a sense of the dignity of each person that we encounter, and to recognize that each of them is a gift. So this next slide is, these are photos that are all taken by a photographer named Lee Jeffries. You can look up his website if you'd like to see other images that he's taken. These are from a series that he did on homeless people. And I think each of them in some way captures the humanity and the beauty of each person. And we see there's different expressions on their faces, but in some way, each of these people, like, at least when I was looking at the pictures, spoke to me in some way of God in a different way. And so maybe just like, is there a particular image on this screen that is speaking to you right now? Does anybody have one that kind of like calls their attention?
For me, the little girl, just because, I don't know, like when you think of, you mentioned it was a series of homeless people that he was photographing. I don't know, when I think of homeless person, I normally don't think of, a child so young. So I don't know if it's just because that's the only color picture, but she, like the facial expression that she has is something that you don't think any child should have to. She looks like she's sad, and that makes me sad.
Yeah.
One that gets my attention is the one in the bottom right of the woman with her hands up to her face. Just because, like, her eyes look very old. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it seems like, like she's gone through probably hell and back, and she's older, and yet she has this expression of, like, surprise. I don't know if it's, like, joy, because I can't really see her mouth, but, like, I don't know. It's just her eyes that caught my attention.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I kind of like the one on the top left. And I think something that stood out to me is kind of like how it looks like his body's shifted like a little bit sideways, like to where he's like kind of like guarding in a way, or like holding something back. And the way he is looking back, it gave me the impression that he's like looking back, wondering what the person looking at him is thinking of him. It like kind of not sure if he should show like you know, his whole front, like, do you accept me, kind of, or like, what are you thinking? Like, trying to figure out what is going on in like the viewer's mind.
Mm-hmm. And I think the image right next to that of the man, like, you know, you wonder what's going on. You see like pain or tiredness or, but all of them I think are powerful images. And this isn't, you know, obviously an artist who is able to capture the reality of people in a striking way that kind of like speaks to us. So I think, you know, Lee Jeffries definitely uses his gift in some ways to awaken in us this sense of the dignity of each of the people that he photographs. And I think the question that I then stayed with was, you know, like, if I was conscious of every person that I meet as a gift, how does that like affect my my way of acting and my way of being? It should change that, you know, it should make me be more conscious of smiling at people and being compassionate and being loving. And I think, you know, in our world right now, and especially maybe in our country, we can see that there's a great need to be able to recognize the image of God in other people, and to listen and to learn from each other, and to value the diversity that we find in humanity. There's people who are different from us, people from different cultures, different backgrounds, and yet each is a human being, and each speaks to us and reflects God to us, and is given in some way as a gift to me. And so I want to share with you this next slide, which is a little bit of my own personal experience of being, working with and being with people of other cultures other than my own. Several years ago, I was in New Orleans, and I worked in a Catholic school in inner city New Orleans. Most of the students came from the projects around the area. But I think what struck me during that time of working with the African American community, I was there for 3 years in that particular community, was the hope of the people that I met, their faith. I really enjoyed going to the African American communities for Mass, the singing that they just, their whole body, they sing with everything that they are, which it's an expression of their faith in a different way, and I loved that. And they were the parents of the children. The children were children. I mean, lovely children, and yes, they came from difficult backgrounds many times, and sometimes we had to unpack what had happened in their neighborhood the night before. And school was a safe place for them, where maybe their neighborhoods weren't necessarily. But as I got to know their parents and developed relationships with them, it was that sense of perseverance and a deep faith in God, and a resilience of spirit that I really learned from that community. And they really spoke to me of their struggles, but also of their hope, and their desire for a different kind of a world. And then the bottom picture I have, this is from when I was in Nicaragua for like 6 weeks practicing my Spanish several years ago. This is a pre-K class of one of the schools that our sisters run there. And it's in a very poor neighborhood in Managua. And a lot of the children there live in houses that have dirt floors and maybe tin roofs, and they just kind of construct their houses out of the materials that they find. But they come to school clean, in clean uniforms every day. because they value education. But I don't know if you can see the little boy in the middle who's got his mouth kind of wide open. He Every day that I went to the pre-K class, because they said the best way to practice your Spanish is just to talk to little kids, because they'll just talk to you, and whether you answer them or not, they'll talk to you. But every day when we would go outside for recess, he would come up to me with some little snack that he had, and he always wanted to share it with me. And I would say, no, it's okay, you eat it. And he would kind of just look at me, and he would then go away and play with his friends and whatever. And finally one day, he came up to me, and he was like really wanting to give me his potato chip or whatever it was that he had. And so I took it from him, and he just got this big, huge smile on his face. And he was like, gracias, thank you for letting me share my food with you. And I think in that moment, I realized the importance for him. And that was something that I also recognized very much in the people in that barrio in Nicaragua. Hospitality. Whenever I went to one of their houses, it was like, let me give you a drink, and let me open my home to you and offer you whatever I have. And to me, those experiences really spoke to me of something of God, God's generosity and hospitality. He wants to give us things, and sometimes we're like, oh no, I don't want it, or and this little boy he was so happy to be able to share something with me, and all I needed to do was say, okay, yes, share it with me. So I think I just wanted to share those experiences, because I think they highlight for me ways that I have learned to see God in the people around me and in the people that I encounter. And we're going to have a little bit of discussion now, because I've been doing a lot of talking. So I want you to think about these two questions that are up here. Who are some people you recognize as gifts in your own life, and what qualities do they have? And the second one, can you share an experience of when someone you didn't know was a gift for you? And what did you learn from that experience? So pick one or both of the questions, and we'll have a little bit of discussion.
Okay, I'll share some for the first one, because that's like the first one that comes to mind. I feel like okay, so with the kids that I've been taking care of this summer so far, I think that they have been like super huge gifts in my life, and I knew that I was gonna enjoy being with them, because like I just enjoy the job in general. But like how specifically each one of them, and they're 4 kids, and so it's triplets, and they're all boys, and then an older brother. And first of all, what I noticed with the triplets is that they're 100% completely different from each other, and each one has like has like something unique and special about them that like touches me in a different way and like changes each of our relationships. But they are like the most excited about the smallest things, and they can be excited if one tiny thing catches their attention. They can be hooked on it for like 30 minutes to an hour of just like the same simple tiny thing, and just being so like in wonder and awe of it, and like cracking up laughing, and they're just so amused by like just the simplicity of everything. And so like even today when we were at the playground, they thought like we were playing like aliens, and so we were like pretending to be from visiting different planets and stuff, and their imagination was just like so big and so creative, and they were so happy. It was like the purest happiness ever. Like nothing else in the world mattered, just each other, and like just us 4 playing together was like everything. And so the way that they view life so simply, and they're so kind and excited about everything, I think is like really just such a gift to me, and also just kind of like teaches me to be able to kind of like see the world in that way also.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll go next, I guess. For me, it'd be the second one. one experience for me would be about a year ago. Yeah, a year ago today. I was moving around from place to place. I didn't have a place to stay. I was staying at For Heaven for Hope and the Salvation Army at the time. And I didn't know any of the people that were staying there. And this junkie came up to me and started talking to me. Like, it was just random, but he came up and started talking about his own experience being a junkie and doing all these drugs and having a hard time getting off of it. And at the time I was going through a hard place, I was also experimenting with drugs, which I shouldn't have been. And he opened my eyes and showed me that it's going to mess my life if I continued. It helped me get my act together. So I'm thankful for that.
Thank you, Angela.
I also have an experience with the second one. I kind of forgotten about it until now, but back in 2016, I think, I went to this summer camp, and so we would stay away. It was like 2 hours away, and so we would stay there for a whole week. And at the end of it, we did like team meeting. It was basically like praise and worship. And so on the last night, it was always a really heavy topic or whatever. So then afterwards, we would go out, we'd take little carpet mats and we'd go out into the fields, like right outside the dining hall. It was just this giant field in the middle of nowhere, so you could see the stars and everything. So we just have like 10 minutes alone to spend with God, basically. And I just remember I was really struggling at that time. Like, I felt out of place at the camp. I felt out of place in everything. And so that's what I was just talking about that whole 10 minutes. And then as we were going back, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go back. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. And this kid that I hadn't seen, probably wasn't even talking to me, probably just talking to his friends. He just turned around. He was like, come on, they're waiting. And it was so powerful and crazy and awesome. Just, yeah.
Thank you, Dahlia.
I guess I'll go next.
Okay.
So I think this was kind of recent. So I guess I'm gonna go with the second. No, I'll go for the first question. I think it's first or second. I think it relates to both. But so I did like a little bit of assistant sub for like Northside ISD, but since the schools closed down, I didn't get to assistant sub because of the pandemic going on. But before that happened, my great experience was that with the little kids, they were like super wonderful kids that like they were like I was like placed in a group where like the kids were like kind of like the ones that had like disabilities. And then I noticed like when I was helping out the kids, the teacher um, was very impressed like how wonderful like I was taking care of the kids and like kind of helping them out. And then like I think this one week where like at the end of some week, uh, there's this kid was like really there and just like always wanted to like, come on, let's play. I'm like, okay. And this kid was like really awesome. And the teacher was like, thank you, like always telling me thank you like so much for like helping out the kids. Like they really like you. So in a way, I think I gave these kids like a little bit of joy that kind of came into place to like help assist and sub. So yeah, it felt really great.
Okay, great. Thank you, Robert. So thank you for all of you for sharing. And I think as we continue this conversation, hopefully you'll, and even afterwards, you'll also be able to like recognize and see different ways that people have been gifts to you or are gifts to you. But we're going to move into a little bit of talking about how are we called to be gifts for others, and how are we called to reflect the beauty of God to others. And I think before we do that, we kind of want to look a little bit at people who've done a really good job of reflecting the beauty of God in their lives. When we look at them, we're like, wow, how did they do that? And we want to imitate them in some way. And that's people that I would call saints, right? So we have two saints on this slide, two of our more modern day saints, Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta and Saint Oscar Romero. And we have this quote from Pope Francis, if somebody wants to read that for me.
I can.
Okay, thank you.
Each saint is a mission planned by the Father to reflect and embody at a specific moment in history a certain aspect of the gospel.
Okay. I like that idea of each saint being a mission that God plans for a specific moment in time in order to share the gospel. So when we think of these two saints that are here, Mother Teresa, we know a little bit about her life. She started off, she was in another religious community, and she had left her country and gone to India as a missionary. And then we find her having this experience of God inviting her and calling her to help the poorest of the poor in India. And it's an experience that she can't ignore. She continues to experience it. And so she, over time, and with the help of her spiritual director, discerns that yes, she's definitely called to leave her religious order and start a new order. And so we see her responding because of her relationship with God. She's able then to do this. And we know that her life wasn't easy, and she wasn't necessarily accepted by all of the people. And certainly the sisters of her other community weren't happy that she was leaving. And there were many struggles and difficulties along the way. And yet we know the beauty of her life and what she accomplished and the order that she founded that continues to serve the poor in our world. And then we have Oscar Romero, who was a bishop in El Salvador and wasn't particularly concerned about the poor until he began to visit the different places and hear their plight and see them, and something changed in his heart. And so then he began to work for justice and to speak out against the government, which eventually leads to his own martyrdom. So we see great saints like this, that God calls forth and says, okay, this is your job, and I want you to show this side of me. Mother Teresa showing the compassionate side of God that welcomes people, that sees the dignity of even those who are dying, who are left to die in the streets, or of Oscar Romero seeing the dignity of the poor and wanting to work for justice for them. But this call isn't just for saints. All of us have this call to reflect the beauty and love of God to others. If we remember that quote from the Catechism, it's a personal vocation that we have. And so all of us are called to holiness. And I think Pope Francis, since he started his pontificate, has been inviting us as Christians to be people who reflect Christ to others, to be people where others, when they encounter us, they encounter Christ, they encounter God's mercy, they find somebody who's willing to walk with them and accompany them. And that's really the call of evangelization and discipleship. And so there's this quote from Rejoice and Be Glad. And if I could ask somebody to read that for us as well.
I can.
Thank you, Father B.
You too need to see the entirety of your life as a mission. Try to do so by listening to God in prayer and recognizing the signs that He gives you. Always ask the Spirit what Jesus expects from you at every moment of your life and in every decision you must make, so as to discern its place in the mission you have received. Allow the Spirit to forge in you the personal mystery that can reflect Jesus Christ in today's world. May you come to realize what that word is, the message of Jesus Christ that God wants to speak to the world by your life.
Okay, so that's a pretty long quote. So what strikes you from that quote? What kind of like jumps out at you? Anybody?
I can go real quick.
Okay, thank you.
So immediately, the word that kind of jumps out to me is forge.
Mm-hmm.
Allow the Spirit to forge in you. Because when you think of forging something, you think of metal, you think of shaping, you think of like a forge, blacksmith type of metal. Me being the nerd that I am, I think of Thor's hammer being, shaped into something mighty, right? I mean, especially in the Infinity War, that special hammer with that special design, right? And so I look at forge, but it says allow the Spirit to forge in you the personal mystery that can reflect Jesus Christ in today's world, essentially saying that we are unfinished beings, that we have to allow the Spirit to mold us and to transform us into who Jesus Christ is in today's world. And so it's essentially much like a piece of steel, much like a piece of something that is molded, that is forged into something else. We must allow ourselves to be molded and forged into the tool that Jesus Christ wants us to be, that God wants us to be. And when we're that tool, when we're that whatever we are, then we can reflect Jesus Christ in today's world because we understand our worth, we understand who we were created to be, we understand our mission, we understand what our vocation, what we're called to be. But it's a lifelong process. It's never finished in reading this. It never says, well, it's finished. It's always changing, it's always needing work, it's always needing to be forged in order to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Father B. I like what you said about, it's always changing and how we are never finished. At the beginning of the quote, it says the entirety of your life is a mission. And so I think that's important to recognize too, that it's not just a particular time that I'm called into mission, but my whole life is a mission. And I think when we recognize that, that gives a sense of importance to our lives as well. Like God created us and put us in this world for a specific reason. And it's a unique mission that I have and a unique role that I have to play in the world. I can't be the person that Denny is called to be in the world, right? Only Denny can be that. And Angelo can't be who Father B is called to be. Only Father B can be that. And to recognize too that if I don't embrace my mission, if I don't embrace the call that God has given me, then the world is going to be a poorer place because of that, because what I'm called to do isn't going to get done. And it might be left for somebody else to try to do, but it's not going to get done by me and who God created it to be, who God created me to be in the world. And I think sometimes we can fall into, well, I'm not good enough, or if only I had this gift or that gift. And St. Teresa of Avila would tell us, like, that's false humility. God has given us everything that we need. And if we are in a relationship with God and we're praying and we are striving to grow into who God creates us to be, then we are living our mission, even if we're not perfect in the way that we think we need to be in order to do it. We have this quote from Mother Teresa here. Yes, I have many human faults and failures, but God bends down and uses us, you and me, to be his compassion and to be his love and his compassion in the world. He bears our sins, our troubles, and our faults. He depends on us to love the world and to show how much he loves it. And I think that's beautiful. She recognizes, her own human faults and failures, and yet God can work in that. We have from scripture that, we hold a treasure in earthen vessels. God knows that he created us as human and fragile, and we have our weaknesses, and yet God can work in and through those weaknesses sometimes too. And sometimes it's the very things that we think, oh, I can't do it because I don't like speaking in front of people. That would be me. I hate speaking in front of people, but God can use that in ways that have surprised me as I taught in the classroom and other things that I've done in my life. And God says, in spite of that, I can use you. So we have another quote here from Teresa of Avila. The Lord asks of us only two things, love of his majesty and love of our neighbor. The most certain sign as to whether or not we are observing these two laws is whether we observe well the love of neighbor. We cannot know whether or not we love God, but we can know whether we love our neighbor. And be certain, the more advanced you see you are in love for your neighbor, the more advanced you will be in the love of God. And so I think, what Teresa of Avila is saying here is, it's difficult. I mean, we can say that we love God, but it's difficult to really be sure of that. But we know when we're loving our neighbors. We know when we're taking care of other people. We know when we're being compassionate, and we know when we're not. And so the more that we are loving our neighbors and being there for them and recognizing their human dignity and trying to be people of compassion and love, then we know that we're also loving God. And I think our world is full of people who are hungering to be noticed. Here's this quote of St. Augustine: the deepest desire of the human heart is to see another and to be seen. I think that's true. As the more that I work in ministry, whether it was my years in teaching or now in campus ministry, people want to be seen and want to be recognized and want to be noticed. And when I go sometimes to St. Joseph's downtown, there's a guy, he's a homeless man who is often there by the church, and we have a conversation every time I go now. But I think, he enjoys the fact that somebody takes the time to spend time and be with him. Children in the classroom, when you notice them and you recognize the good job that they're doing, they also, it's like we feel that. And I think in our campuses, there are probably lots of people who wish that somebody would see them and would want to spend time with them. And so I think that's the question that we need to ask ourselves a little bit is who is God inviting me to see, and who is God inviting me to spend time with? This next quote from Pope Benedict talks a little bit about how we need to encounter people. Let's not be afraid to be silent outside and inside ourselves, so that we are able not only to perceive God's voice but also the voice of the person next to us, the voices of others. And I think when we are talking about accompanying other people, whether it's just people that we meet and we have a conversation with, or people that we are in a more of a discipleship or spiritual direction accompaniment kind of relationship, we need to be willing to listen, and listen for God's voice, but also listen to what the other person is saying. It takes time to get to know people, and people need to have that space and that ability to share themselves. And sometimes in our world today, I think the pandemic is making us slow down a little bit more, but we tend to be very rush. And encountering people and getting to know them means taking time to be with them. Authentic friendship is taking time to invest in people, wasting time with them sometimes, sharing our lives with them, and then also being willing to be vulnerable, letting people see my own struggles, as well as the ways that I've grown or that I'm growing, helps people to see, okay, if she can do that, or if she was able to get through that experience, then I have the possibility of doing that as well. And when I can accept people and love them where they are, in the place that they are right now, that's also a way of being a bridge for them to God, because I think there's we all know people who don't trust God, or who have had bad experiences with religion or faith, and we can be bridges to those people if we are people that they can trust and they can experience accepting them and loving them. And we can then help them to experience and come to know a God that is loving and kind and compassionate in the same way that we are. So, time for more sharing. I've got 3 questions here. How do you already share the beauty of God's love with other people? So let's maybe take that first question. What are some ways that you share God's love with others, or that you've done that recently? Maybe we can hear from people that we haven't heard from yet.
I can go ahead and start. So one thing that I've started doing more is more walking in the parks and around San Antonio, and kind of following that model of noticing people. I tend to notice that a lot of people, when they're walking, they look down, and I don't know why people are afraid of eye contact or just encountering people. So what I do is I make it a point to look out, and as we're passing somebody, I'll turn and I'll look at them and I'll tell them hi or good morning, good afternoon, whatever. But just making it known that I notice them and I recognize that they are there. And it's been pretty fulfilling, because normally somebody, if they're looking up doing the same thing I am, they're really cheery and ready to greet people. But there's other people that when they're looking down and I say it, they look up and they say, oh, good morning, and they kind of just they brighten up a little bit and they have a smile now. And so that always just kind of makes me feel good, because then it's like my goal was accomplished. They felt recognized, they felt appreciated for being there. And so yeah, that's just a small little thing.
Okay. Thank you. Leanne, how do you share God's love with other people?
I don't know. Well, even though it's summer, I'm still continuing Bible study, and it has been really fun, because I still meet with all the girls every Tuesday on Zoom. And it's been really nice because I usually ask them like what topic do they want to discuss or what do they want to read. And then so I guess like in a way I feel like I'm able to share God's beauty with them and God's love with the other girls, and just like, you know, just doing my best to answer their questions and just asking God what it is he wants me to talk about or to reveal to them, or like what it is he wants me to say to the other girls. And so and they really enjoy it, so do I. So I would say that's like one way that I'm sharing God's beauty with them.
Thank you.
I can share. One thing that I've been trying to do is, I think with all of this like COVID pandemic stuff, like being at home or like not being able to see your friends like you usually do, taking the time to like text them or call them and just to see like how they're doing. Because I think it can be easy to just kind of, I don't know, I found myself like just kind of like staying to myself, or like, I don't know, not talking to people. And so I think like trying to be intentional and reaching out to people, because I don't know, I feel like it can feel isolating and lonely. And if I feel like that, I'm sure other people do. So trying to just ask people how they're doing, ask my friends how they're doing, and checking in every couple days. I think it's how I'm trying to love on people.
Yeah, thank you. I think I talk to my family regularly, but I think now during the pandemic, I do that even more. And probably, my sisters and I talk to each other a lot more than my brothers and I, but I've been talking more to my brothers now too. So that's, I think, also something that maybe I've learned, okay, I need to do a little bit more of that, not just during pandemic, but just in general. So this second question, how is evangelization and discipleship? No, my grid is over the question. How is it related to seeing and sharing the beauty of others? I think that's the basic question. So any thoughts or ideas on that? Anyone?
I think that when we share the love of God or the beauty of God with people, can you guys, it's me, Deanna, by the way. I know that I'm not, my video's not on because my computer's messing up, but you can hear me, correct?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed with my family, especially, like I can share things, I can share the beauty of God in creation or in art or in a song, and really share the gospel with them without actually like pulling out my Bible and explaining like this is from the book of John, or and sometimes that's a more approachable way to share the gospel. And so I think that just taking the approach of sharing the beauty of God in ways that aren't always explicitly like in the language that we who are like really involved disciples can understand, but just in sharing things that are all around us. I think it's a really amazing opportunity to evangelize. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, something that I was kind of reflecting on is the fact that like evangelization and discipleship used to be two words that used to like scare me a lot, because I used to think it was this like huge formal thing, and I kind of felt like I don't feel like I know, or I don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough to like evangelize somebody, and I used to be like really intimidated by that. And then the more that I've grown in my faith, I really realized kind of like what other people have been sharing, like getting to know somebody's story and just taking the time to spend time with them, and like even something with the kids, they ask me all the time, like, do you like studying better or do you like playing with us better? And when I play with them, like, if I'm on my phone or like responding to a message or something, they can tell that I'm not like with them in that moment. And so just like being really aware of like how my actions, like, I guess, affect the people around me, and like giving them all my attention and my time to really show them that like they're heard and they're seen and that somebody is really invested in their life. And I think something that I've learned even through prayer and stuff is like God is invested in all of our lives, and when we pray, he's always listening and he's so attentive and he's never distracted, you know, and like halfway listening to us. And so just being able to do that with the people that you interact with, and every interaction is like really important, and that's a way that you can show God's love, which I didn't realize, and now I'm less intimidated by the word evangelization and discipleship.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. You do a great job.
Thank you.
Just from our conversations, I know you do a good job in your interactions with many people besides the kids that you're. So I think, I mean, you touched a little bit even like on question number 3 here, where it says, think of someone you know who needs to encounter God's beauty and love, and what can you do to facilitate this encounter? You know, being present to them, I think, is definitely one of the ways that we can help people to encounter God. And so maybe that's like kind of a homework for us from this session, is to, like, each of us think of somebody that maybe God is inviting us to go a little deeper with, and what can we do? You know, how can we reach out to that person? How can we share a little bit more with them so that we can facilitate them coming to know God in a deeper way? And maybe there's not somebody yet, but maybe God's going to put that person in our path later this week or something too. Unless anybody else has something to share, that's pretty much what we had for tonight. So, last chance. Thank you then, everybody, for being here this evening.